Welcome to the 5-Minute Leadership Podcast. We have been talking about how to make disciples, especially how to engage our communities, our campuses, and our culture with the gospel. It's a privilege to have Karla Garrard with me, and we're going to talk about how to engage the next generation. Karla, thank you for being here, taking these few minutes. Karla, when I was with you and Brent earlier this year, I was so impressed with the multi-generational aspect of your church. How do you engage the next generation with the gospel? How do you not lose the next generation? And how, in the context of making disciples, can leaders stay engaged with two generations?
Well, for us, one of our passions is to build a church that's diverse, not only in ethnicity, but also generationally. And I will say that it's difficult. Each generation has to somewhat give concessions. And oftentimes we find in our context that the concession has to come from the older generation to the young, whether it's in music or atmosphere. And we have learned ourselves that the importance as leaders to allow people to learn to lead and mess up and then find themselves being successful after being discipled through a tough situation, or being allowed to have a platform that maybe they don't even have all the experience or wisdom for yet. Building a church that way takes intention. It takes effort, but not striving. I think I see, for me personally, in the relationship that I saw Jesus with his disciples, if children were eager to get to him, they felt safe.
Right.
And so for me, if we're going to model Jesus in discipling the younger generation, I want to be a safe place for kids to grow and learn and have a safe place to fail, and then have boundaries in and out to succeed.
When you talk about especially the older people making concessions, what are some of those? You talked about music and worship. What are some other ones that our generation needs to say, we'll let this go. I don't like it, but it's not contrary to the gospel, and it seems to be connecting. What are some of those things?
Right. This might seem silly, but from jeans with holes in them to wearing hats on stage.
There were a lot of holes in the jeans on the stage.
We're intentional about speaking to our older generations and even ourselves, that the way the gospel is exported in the community through young people looks a little different. They may have their small group at the skateboard park, or they may be in Starbucks meeting versus necessarily within the context of the four walls of the church.
The financial backbone of most churches in North America are the empty nesters. So we're talking people who are late 40s into their 70s. And how many of those have you lost when you start doing things and asking them to make concessions? That becomes a real practical issue for pastors.
We had a particular season where we had almost like an exodus of that generation. And one of the things that they would often say to us was, I'm now in my 60s and it's time for me to rest. And personally, we thought, oh my goodness, but you have so much to offer. This is the time now where you have the chance to be a Paul, so to speak, to a Timothy. I think one of the most profound statements I heard is from a lady who's now 88 in our church. And she said to me one time, Karla, I can't say that I love the music and the lights and necessarily the language surrounding this generation, but when I see kids loving Jesus, and I see young college students wanting to reach their campus for the gospel, I'll listen to any kind of song you want to put on that stage. It spoke to me as one who's been in church all of my life. Now I'm coming to a place where I'm like, I'm not so sure I even like the way this is happening, but if in the end I'm seeing young people love Jesus without compromising the gospel, I want to empower young people with that. It is a passion and a non-negotiable for me for the rest of my life.
Your kids are age from, you said 8 up to what, 18?
Almost 18.
Okay, I'm sure they give input. I'm sure they give ideas, and when they think the church needs to turn this way or that way culturally to reach their generation. How much do you allow them to influence, because they're godly young men and women?
We actually listen a great deal. I have to work on listening and not interjecting my thought while they're speaking, but I think that they have a lot of valid points, and watching them navigate and learn the importance of keeping the important thing, being cross-centered, and listening to them navigate their own way through learning that particular concept can only happen if I'm listening. And so it's very important to me, and they do give plenty of input.
Okay, whether you ask or not.
Whether I ask or not.
Great leadership lesson in what Karla said. It is important to listen to the next generation. It's not necessary that we agree or that we always do what they suggest, but it's always important that we listen.